I'd like to get started. Welcome to ProfBot, Harnessing a Chatbot to Increase Student Outcomes and Engagement, which we first gave in August 2023. My name is Sean Wise. I am very proud to be a member of the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Department of the Ted Rogers School of Management at Toronto Metropolitan University, formerly known as Ryerson. I'd like to take a moment and share the agenda. After a brief introduction, we'll talk about the problem that we're trying to attack. We'll introduce you to ProfBot. We'll talk a little bit about barriers to adoption. My colleague Nader will give you a live demonstration so you can just see how easy it is as an instructor to use it. We will finish off with some further resources that you can use in case you want them, as well as discuss next steps. I would ask people to withhold their questions till the end. My ADHD brain gets confused easily, and I find it helpful to leave the questions till the very end. I would like to acknowledge that Toronto is in the dish with one spoon territory, and the dish with one spoon territory is a treaty between surrounding First Nations that bound them to share this territory and protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nations and peoples and all newcomers have been invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. So I started at university about 14 years ago. And when I first started, this was what I had. People came to class, they were sitting on their edge of the seats, they had done the readings, and they wanted to discuss it. They wanted to understand it. They wanted to go deeper. I don't know about you, but this is what I have today. Students are more disengaged than ever, more entitled than ever, and it's becoming harder and harder to get them to engage with the material. Now, as an entrepreneurship and innovation professor, you have to find your customer where it is, and I'm greatly concerned of this rise in what they call in the economic world quiet quitting, where you're barely doing the minimum to get by, to not get fired. I didn't realize this, but quiet quitting is a global concern with huge numbers of people walking through their working day like zombies, simply doing the work to get paid, not enjoying it, not engaging it, not being thrilled with it. And I think that problem is hit campuses. A recent survey of 1,000 community, public, and private colleges across North America found that 1/3 of students on campus today put forward no effort in their studies, none. They found that 1 in 5 believe that their school life balance is still unhealthy. And 60% of people who were 60% of the group that was interviewed all agreed that C's get degrees. Never before have people paid so much money to be educated and then not got the value because they weren't participating. So we tried to figure out a solution. And to do that, we looked into the new wave of artificial intelligence. In particular, we'd seen several papers that talked about active learning being very important for 21st century learners. We also found that one of the chatbot biggest benefits was student engagement. So we thought we would really zero in on that. How can we use a chatbot to engage students? But we had to do so in the real world where chatbots are far from perfect. So we had the opportunity to go through a bunch of solutions, and in the end, we settled on using OpenAI's ChatGPT, which is a large language model, a type of artificial intelligence that can look almost human. And from that, we created an instance of the artificial intelligence, a version that we call ProfBot. Now, ProfBot is meant to be used by students any time of the day, any place, on their phone, on their laptop, on their desktop. It's meant to find students where they are and do micro learning through engagement. So ProfBot just looks like a chatbot app. It uses questions from a pool that the professors submit, so we control what sort of material is being focused on. It then also only uses the professor's benchmark answer. And so by really limiting the scope of ProfBot, we've been able to eliminate some of the dangers. ProfBot really only does 2 things. First, it asks questions from a list provided by an instructor. Whether they're on the desktop or the subway or they're sitting in class, they can engage with a pre-populated list populated by you. who is the curator of what they should be studying. Then it takes the student's input, the 300 words the student may have used or so, and it compares them to the benchmark answer the professor established. But unlike instances of computers and quizzing before, it actually understands the answer. So it doesn't go to the internet to get the answer. It doesn't rely on someone else's information. All it does is take the student answer and compare it with what your benchmark is. And it helps the student by giving instant feedback whether their answer is in line with the benchmark or could be improved. And so when a student gives an answer, it gives it a suggestion and it replies with real-time critical feedback. It's also really nice. It always congratulates the students and encourages them, much nicer than I am. So we think, and I say think because we haven't run the peer-reviewed trial data, but we think that this idea of using personalized feedback, only drawing from curated content curated by you, the faculty, and giving students real-time feedback on how to improve might be a game changer. So we decided to do a pilot study. But before we could do that, being good entrepreneurship professors, we knew we wanted to discuss with faculty their concerns, their thoughts on adoption, what the students might be concerned on. And first, we realized we had to find out what would make students use it. And it was a very interesting customer discovery interview where we found out that if the professor could see the results of the students practicing, then the students weren't going to use it. They did not, they wanted a safe place to practice. Sort of when they go in to see the TA and they talk about issues, they can feel more open because the professor isn't on top of them. And we actually were able to turn that into an advantage. We don't record the conversation, so we don't have a privacy issue. We don't have a data storage issue. Once the student is finished, the chatbot erases the records. The second group was really about what were the risks seen by professors, faculty, instructors of using such a tool. And these professors are in the field, so they know firsthand what potential risks could be involved. The ones that we focused on were misinformation, bias, and privacy. These were the three that came up over and over again as I did customer discovery interviews. To address these three things, we used a technique, not a technology, but a technique called guardrailing, whereas guardrails are safe zones created around an artificial intelligence to keep it from wandering off. So for instance, our chatbot, ProfBot, can't ask a question that's not on the list. Our chatbot can't respond to a question that doesn't come from a list. Our chatbot can't accept call me by different names. It can't do anything other than the specific job of comparing the student's answer to the benchmark answer and giving feedback through a very established set of verbiage and encouragement. So for misinformation, we address it by ProfBot does not use anything other than its knowledge of language and what you've provided it to interact with the students. We think because, as everyone knows, the internet is incredibly toxic and biased, and because these chatbots are trained on the internet, we knew we had to be very careful to only ensure that your material, which has been cleared, would be used to engage with, thereby eliminating the biases that might exist in the greater internet community. And again, from a privacy perspective, we decided not to record the conversations because students wouldn't allow it. They wouldn't participate if we did. And we also got other benefits because our privacy concerns are much less, our security concerns are much less. So in the end, we ran a pilot last spring. That pilot ran for 9 days and 243 students from 3 different instructors participated. Over those 9 days, almost 3,000 quizzes were given. Each quiz is 5 minutes and 5 questions. When we finished the 9 days, we had seen, unfortunately, that more than 50% of the quizzes occurred in the last 24 hours, and 70% of the quizzes were in the last 48 hours. So students consistently are last-minute Larrys, not getting ahead of their studies. We did notice, and again, not peer-reviewed, we have not sent out the data, We did notice anecdotally and with the limited data we had that students who used ProfBot actually increased their grades on the final exam. We found that in total, 78% of our students engaged with the ProfBot more than once. In entrepreneurship, we say someone buys something once, it could be accidental, but if they come back and buy more, then it's usually a sign you may have a value proposition. Only 16 students didn't use ProfBot. When we did a survey, 80% of the students ranked ProfBot anonymously as valuable, very valuable, or extremely valuable. I personally found that it was the personalized feedback that students were most taken by. But the truth is, it's just doing what we all know is better pedagogy, engaging one-on-one with a student in their own words and helping them to understand how to get from where they are today to where we want their knowledge to be tomorrow. That's all I have to share with you. Now I'm going to turn to our community manager, Nader, who I'm going to ask to give you a small demo.
Sounds great. Awesome. Thanks, Sean. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nader. I'm the community manager for ProfBot, and today I have the pleasure of walking you through all today on the call on how to create and publish a quiz. So for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm going to be sharing my screen, but in order to do so, I'm going to be turning off my camera just to preserve the bandwidth and to avoid any potential delays on the call. So without further ado, I'm going to get started right now. Sean, I'm going to just ask you to confirm if you could see my screen. It should say thank you for visiting our beta site.
I can confirm.
Amazing. Great. We're ready to get started. So what you see right now, folks, on your screen is the landing page for our beta site. So we're going to hit the Get Started button. Now, the first thing that you want to do is log in using your credentials, assuming that you've already completed the registration process. If you have not to worry. We do have a tutorial available on our YouTube channel that teaches you how to create and register an account as a professor in less than 2 minutes. And after the webinar is completed, we'll be providing you with these resources to get you hitting the ground running as soon as possible. So we're going to hit the sign in button. It's going to take you to the dashboard page. So this is the dashboard, but now what we're going to focus more on is the all quiz tab. So to see all your drafted and published quizzes, we're going to move to the left-hand side, hit the all quiz button. So now we see the quiz library. So you'll see all your available drafted and published quizzes available here. But let's say I want to create a new quiz now. To do so, we're going to hit this plus new button next to the title quizzes. And then we're going to populate the entry fields here. So you're going to give your quiz a title as well as a start and end date for when you'd like to make it available for your students to practice. We also recommend keeping your quiz status in draft mode until you've completed entering all your questions. But later on in this tutorial, I'll teach you how to actually update your status mode. So let's say I teach a strategic management course. If that's the case, I'm going to title my quiz a strategic management quiz. We'll make the start date available tomorrow, and we'll give our students 1 week to complete it. And again, we're going to keep it in draft mode. So we're going to hit add. I'm going to close the dialog box, and we'll see that it's been added in our library in draft mode. Now to add a question, simply we're going to scroll across till you find the column that says add questions, hit add. It's going to say that there are no records to display because we haven't populated any questions in yet. So to do so, we're going to hit this plus new button, and we're going to populate the entry fields here. Now, something to keep in mind is when you're creating your questions, you want to keep them explicit versus creating open-ended questions. Now, for the purposes of this demo, I'll only be creating 2 questions, but when you create your own quiz, the minimum you'll need is 5 questions to a maximum of 50. The reason why we ask for a minimum of 5 is because every quiz a student completes will always be 5 questions under 5 minutes. So when you have a bank of questions, on the other hand, your students will then be able to practice with a variety of questions ranging from different levels of difficulty every time, and therefore improving their comprehension of the course material. So again, this is a strategic management course. Let's say the first question I want to ask my students is, what is the definition or what is a tactic? Below here is the answer dialog box. This is where I'm going to give ProfBot the benchmark answer that will be used to evaluate student responses. So I'm going to provide my answer here. So a tactic is an action a company takes each quarter to achieve a short-term result. Great. And then below it is the grading rubric. So this is just asking you how many points this question is out of. We're going to just hit 1. So for a question like this, we'll give it 1 mark, hit add. And then you'll see that your question has been added, and you'll continue that process for all of them. Now, let's say, for example, if you wanted to go back, you made a mistake, or you may have changed your mind saying, you know what, I want to make this question out of 2 marks instead of 1. You're just going to hit this edit button, make any revisions that you see fit, and then hit update, and then you'll close the dialog box. But let's say for our second question, we want to ask our students to name and list something, but you as a professor, you're not picky in terms of what order they put it in, so long as they use the right terminology and verbiage. If that's the case, we're going to prompt ProfBot that a verbatim response is not required. So our system is pretty intuitive. So the more specific you are or detailed in the answer, the more specific and detailed you are in the answer dialog box, the better it will be in terms of evaluating student answers. So what does that look like? So we're gonna hit this plus new button, and we're gonna create a new question. So let's say I'm gonna ask my students to name and list all 5 forces of Porter's model. So again, me as a professor, I'm not picky in terms of what order my students put it in. So long as they use the right concepts, I'm gonna then tell ProfBot that a verbatim response is not required. And then below it, I'm going to provide the answer to the question above. So it will be rivalry, threat of entrance, threat of substitutes, bargaining power of buyers, and bargaining power of suppliers. Great. And then for a question like this, we'll give it 5 marks. And then we're going to hit add. All right, great. And then you'll see that everything is added below. So let's say hypothetically we've finished entering all our questions. Again, minimum of 5, maximum of 50. And now we're ready to publish our quiz. To do so, we're going to simply go back to the all quiz page on the left-hand side. Under the actions column, we're going to hit the edit function. And then we're going to update our status from draft to publish. Hit update. And then you'll see that your quiz is now published. So now in order for your students to then access it, it can be done through 2 ways. It could be done through 1, copying their URL. You'll see the check mark, and then therefore it's been copied to your clipboard. And then you could either email it to them or publish it as an announcement on whatever communication channels that you use to connect with your students, whether that be through D2L, Blackboard, or other means. You could also have your students create a student account so long as you both are sharing the same university email address. But that is it for me, folks. We do have a more comprehensive tutorial on how do you create and publish quizzes on ProfBot. And now that is available on our YouTube channel. But again, these resources will be provided to you after the webinar. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it back to Sean for the closing remarks.
Thank you, Nader. I appreciate your demo, and congratulations. It gets better each time you do it. I wanted to start post-demo with 2 frequently asked questions, because professors always have asked this question of me, and I want to answer. So if it's not verbatim, how does it know that the answer is similar enough, that large and huge are both synonyms that can be used in this example? I'm not an artificial intelligence expert, but I have an answer for that question. It uses the concept of semantic similarities, that huge and large can be moved in sentences and replaced with each other because they're synonyms, and the sentence will retain its meaning. When that is done through artificial intelligence and a whole bunch of math that I can't possibly describe to you, it is able to understand how close that answer is to the answer that is the benchmark. The second question I usually get is, how are the 5 marks distributed? You know, my TA can figure out there's 5 elements in the list, 1 mark per. But what if it's a larger question? You know, describe the reasons why entrepreneurship in the 21st century is more available to everyone. Well, that's a much more nuanced answer. And the ProfBot will assign 10% of the marks for 10% of your benchmark. And if they get 50% of your benchmark through semantic similarity, then it will assign 50% of the marks. It's much easier in the case of Porter's model. If the student only got 3 of the 5, you would see that that's 3 out of 5. But when it's a more complicated answer is when ProfBot really shines, because it helps the student to understand a more nuanced take on the concept. Now, Nader did tell you that there's a lot being shared with you, and as good academic startups, We have lots of documentation, lots of examples of questions and how they work. And so your only real job is to decide, do you want to try this? And if you want to try it, then we will work with you to create your own ProfBot. But it is as easy as creating a blog page. It's really very technically not complicated. From a next specs perspective, if you're still on the fence, we haven't done our job right, but that's okay. You can sign up for the wait list at profbot.ai, and there is a little quiz running there as a video so that you can kind of see the student's perspective. When you are interested, tomorrow you will get an email with some of these links, including how to sign up. But again, you don't need a video on how to sign up. It's fairly straightforward. We just made it to be thorough. If you want to take a picture of this barcode or of this RFID code or this QR code, you will get to our ProfBot beta and skip the wait list, where you can go to bit.ly/ProfBot beta. We are running a beta this fall. It doesn't mean anything more than we're hand-holding our first users to make sure they have the best experience and using that information to make us better for the winter semester. That's it from me. I'm going to open it up for questions. But again, the reason we're doing this isn't to replace teaching assistants. The reason we're doing this is because this isn't a good way to learn. And we need to work together to go from this back to this. So thank you very, very much. I know this is a webinar, not a Zoom. So if you have questions, it would be wonderful if you could put them in the chat box now. Thank you so much for attending. We will be in touch. If you have to go eat your lunch or do something else, you're welcome to. Otherwise, we're going to open the floor to questions. Oh, one of the questions I got last time was, how do we make money? And the answer is, we don't. Until we know that this is a valuable tool to help Canadian students, to help professors, there's no revenue model. We're using government grants to sort of explore, can this help our students become more engaged? Can this help fight quiet quitting? But in the future, I don't know what the revenue model would be. Maybe it's going to be some freemium model. So every student, regardless of finances, can use ProfBot. But if you use it 10 times in a week, maybe they'll charge you $1. We don't know, and we're not there yet. Right now, we're looking for professors who want to try this, who are struggling with engaging their students, not just entrepreneurship, not just the business school. We've got math, we've got engineering, we've got fashion. So all places, all things, all topics are welcome. Are there any questions at this time?
Yeah, we got our first question.
Wonderful.
We have questions coming in. So if you hit the Q&A function.
Yeah, can you just read it to me for now?
Yeah, for sure. The first one is, instead of profs asking questions, is there a way for students to ask their doubts, etc.?
So to ask the student, to have the student ask the chatbot to tell you about an area the student is less comfortable with. No, our ProfBot only does this one thing. There are many AI tools that you can go online and get that will take your textbook and do just that. They will allow, by digesting the textbook, they will allow the benchmark. By digesting your slides, they will be able to do what you want, but that's not something ProfBot itself does or will be doing.
Next, I think they responded with, is it, they meant, is it just quizzes? And I think that it is.
It's just quizzes. Right now, we're just focused on final exams, weekly quizzes, helping students move forward.
All right. And then the next question is how to create mathematic quiz with different symbols, which was asked last time as well.
Thank you so much. All characters are seen by the AI for what they are. So the plus sign, it knows is a plus sign, the division sign. So because it's been trained using all the language set, including mathematics, as long as you are using the standard symbology that would be used in any typewritten mathematics document, it will be able to interpret it. The more open-ended questions, not really the mathematics questions, like write an elevator pitch for Netflix, it's good at, but the closer you come to tacit knowledge and the farther you get from explicit knowledge, the more it becomes difficult for the AI to actually understand what's being conveyed. Thank you for your question.
No questions so far. We've answered the first two. If anyone has any more questions, feel free to just enter them in now. All right. Can we add pictures of a question?
We had pictures of a question. You know what? I haven't been asked that question. I think the answer is yes, but I don't think there's a place to add pictures. Meaning, at the moment, all questions are text. But if we had an attachment feature, it would likely be able to tell you, is this a raccoon, and then see if it is or it isn't. I'd have to get back to you on that. Thank you so much. That's a really interesting question.
All right. And no questions so far.
Okay. Well, oh, we got one more.
But one more. If it was completely successful, what would it look like?
So if ProfBot's beta pilot is completely successful, what would it look like? It would look like this. It would look like we did what we accomplished to do. I think the question you're really asking is, down the road, if this were to work, what would the model be? What would the license be? And I appreciate that. And I'm sure we have some ideas, to include it in D2L or other online CMSs. But that's a little bit horse and cart. I think until we see that students will use it, until you, the professors, the real users, feel this is actually helping, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves and say whether this is a $9 product or a $1 per quiz. I have no idea, to be honest. And really, that's not our motivation. My motivation is to really stop this. It's awful.
Okay. And then there are no more questions.
So I want to thank Nader. I want to thank all of you for taking time to meet with us. We are recording this. So if for some reason you don't want your name to appear or there's some other concern, please let us know. Otherwise, we will make this recording available to you so you can share it with friends, or you can follow up if there's something still outstanding. Again, we'll be emailing you tomorrow with all of the links, and we hope that that will satisfy all of your questions. And if not, please feel free to reach out to myself, Sean Wise, or my colleague Nader. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.